Forget everything you know about trucks. You think they are just boring tools with four wheels and a bed. You are dead wrong. We are about to uncover the true freaks of automotive history. Imagine a truck made entirely of wood and leather. Picture a massive beast with an engine that screams but has absolutely no radiator. Or a three-wheeled nightmare that threatens to flip over if you turn the steering wheel too fast. These aren't sci-fi movies. This is history. Which one is a genius invention and which one is a death trap? You have to watch until number 1 to believe your eyes. Smash that subscribe button right now because we are going full throttle into the 10 weirdest trucks ever made. Let's kick things off with something that looks less like a truck and more like a motorcycle having an identity crisis. This is the Tempo hanseat. Originating in Germany right after the war, this three-wheeled oddity was the definition of desperate innovation to get the economy moving again. The most striking feature is undeniably that single front wheel. But look closer at the mechanics. The engine isn't under the seat or in the back. The entire powertrain, a tiny 400cc two-stroke motor producing just 15 horsepower, is mounted directly on top of the front fork. It looks incredibly fragile, yet it was the workhorse for thousands of businesses. Driving a hanseat was a physical workout and a chaotic lesson in physics. Because the vibrating engine sat heavily on the front wheel, when you turned the steering wheel, you were physically swinging the entire engine assembly left or right. And here is the scary part. The center of gravity was frighteningly high. If you took a corner too fast while the cargo bed was empty, the truck would literally try to somersault. It was notorious for tipping over on sharp turns, yet it offered a top speed of around 30 miles per hour, which was terrifyingly fast for a tricycle loaded with bricks or produce. Despite its comical appearance and the constant threat of rolling over, the Tempo hanseat was so simple and cheap that it became a legend. While Germany eventually moved on to four wheels, the tooling for this truck was sold to India, where it evolved into the Bajaj auto rickshaws. So, in a way, this weird German tricycle never really died. It just emigrated. But if you think driving a three-wheeler is scary, wait until you see our next entry. We are moving from three wheels to four, with a truck from East Germany that smoked like a chimney and ran on a mixture of oil and hope. Crossing the Iron Curtain into East Germany, we find the Framo V901. While the US was building massive V8 pickups, the engineers in the GDR were working with severe limitations. The Framo V901 is a fascinating study in communist minimalism. Produced in the 1950s, it looks somewhat charming today with its classic curves and separate headlights. However, make no mistake, this was a bare-bones utility vehicle designed for a world where steel and fuel were scarce. It served as everything from a delivery van to a minibus and even an ambulance, proving that necessity is indeed the mother of invention. Under the hood sat a minuscule 900cc three-cylinder two-stroke engine. Yes, a two-stroke truck engine. That meant every time you fired it up, you were greeted with the distinctive ring-ding-ding sound and a thick cloud of blue smoke. It produced roughly 24 to 28 horsepower. To put that in perspective, most modern riding lawnmowers have more kick than this truck. It struggled to reach 50 miles per hour, and if you were hauling a heavy load of coal uphill, you could probably walk faster alongside it. The cabin was noisy, hot, and smelled permanently of burnt oil. Despite its lack of power, the V901 has gained a cult following today among vintage enthusiasts. It represents a time when mechanics were simple enough that you could fix your engine with a hammer and a wrench on the side of the road. It's a cute, smoky piece of history that paved the way for the Barcus van, but we are done with small and cute. Let's jump from the tiny 900cc Framo to a French monster that was built to move mountains, featuring an engine so big it could power a small ship. They say everything is bigger in Texas, but clearly they never saw the French-made Willme TG200. This wasn't just a truck, it was a land train. Produced by Willme, a company famous for heavy-duty haulers, the TG200 was the undisputed king of the road in the 1960s. The TG stood for Tracteur Géant, giant tractor, and it lived up to the name. This 8A4 beast was designed specifically for convoy exceptionnel, or exceptional convoys, tasked with hauling super heavy loads like electrical transformers and locomotive parts across the country. Just look at the scale of this thing. The truck itself weighed over 40 tons without a load. Under that massive locomotive-like hood, it was often powered by a Detroit diesel V16 engine or a massive Cummins power plant, generating the immense torque needed to pull loads exceeding 200 tons. The design is unforgettable, a flat, imposing vertical face with a windshield that seems to look down on everything else on the road. The sheer number of tires needed to distribute the weight of the loads it carried is mind-boggling, turning the asphalt into a mere suggestion of a road. Driving this Leviathan required incredible skill. There was limited power steering assist compared to today. It was pure muscle and mechanical leverage. The Willme TG200 remains a symbol of industrial might, a dinosaur from an era before modular, self-propelled trailers took over the heavy lifting. It is a machine of pure brute force that commands respect. Speaking of unique engines, our next truck didn't just have a big engine. It had an engine that didn't need a single drop of water to stay cool, screaming down the highway with a sound you will never forget. If you were in Europe in the 1960s and heard a loud screaming roar coming down the road, it was probably a Magirus-Deutz Rundhauber. The nickname Rundhauber translates to round hood, referring to that distinctively curved alligator-style nose that gave it a friendly yet tough appearance. But the real magic wasn't the shape, it was the engineering philosophy. While the rest of the world was fussing with radiators, water pumps, hoses, and coolant leaks, Magirus-Deutz simply said, "Why bother?" and removed the cooling system entirely. These trucks were powered by legendary air-cooled diesel engines, available in V8 or even V12 configurations. That's right, no water. They used massive high-speed fans to blast air directly over the finned cylinders to keep them cool. This made them incredibly reliable in extreme climates, whether it was the freezing cold of the Alps where water would freeze, or the scorching heat of the Sahara where water would boil. The Magirus didn't care. As long as there was air, it would run. The sound is iconic, a distinct high-pitched clatter that is music to the ears of truck enthusiasts. The Rundhauber was tough as nails, becoming the preferred choice for fire trucks and construction vehicles across the globe. The rounded hood wasn't just for style, it allowed for better visibility on rough terrain compared to the square noses of the competition. It represents German engineering at its most pragmatic. From the noisy construction sites of Germany, let's travel to the quiet, majestic wilderness of America for a vehicle that is as yellow as the sun and holds a special place in U.S. history. This next entry is a Hollywood star. You might recognize the white 706 as the Jammer buses from Yellowstone National Park. Built by the White Motor Company in the late 1930s, these vehicles are perhaps the most beautiful fusion of a rugged truck chassis and a passenger coach ever created. They were designed specifically for the National Park Service to transport tourists in style through the American wilderness. Painted a bright, distinctive yellow, they were made to stand out against the greenery of the forests, becoming an icon of the park experience. The most distinct feature is the canvas rollback top. In an era before panoramic glass roofs, this was high-tech luxury. The driver could roll the canvas roof back, allowing passengers to gaze up at the towering peaks of the Tetons or the geysers of Yellowstone without obstruction. Powered by a reliable inline-six engine, they weren't fast, climbing steep mountain passes at maybe 25 to 30 miles per hour, but speed wasn't the point. The point was the view. Passengers sat on leather bench seats, experiencing the park with the wind in their hair and the smell of pine trees filling the cabin. But why are they called jammers? It's because of the non-synchronized manual transmissions. The drivers had to double clutch and often jam the gears to get them to shift on the steep mountain grades, creating a distinct grinding sound. These buses are built on the rugged white model 706 truck chassis, giving them the durability to handle rough park roads for nearly a century. But while the white 706 had a classic long nose, Truck designers were starting to realize that sometimes the best place for the driver is right on top of the engine. Before the flat-faced trucks we see today dominated the highways, there was a transition period, and the Kenworth bullnose is the king of that era. Produced in the early 1950s, this was Kenworth's cab-over-engine COE design, but it didn't look like a brick wall. It had style. The front end was rounded, featuring a distinctive bubble shape that earned it the bullnose nickname. This truck represents the golden age of American trucking, where design flair met industrial utility on the newly formed interstate system. Due to strict length regulations on highways back then, manufacturers had to squash the cabin to maximize trailer space. Kenworth did it with elegance, often packing a Cummins diesel engine producing over 200 horsepower inside. However, the driver paid the price. The engine was literally inside the cab with you, covered by a large metal doghouse between the seats. It was hot, noisy, and cramped. If you wanted to check the oil, you had to disassemble parts of the interior. There was no tilting mechanism for the cab yet. Despite the maintenance nightmare, the bullnose was the chariot of the American road warrior. Seeing a restored bullnose today is a rare treat, capturing the romance of the open road before aerodynamics turned everything into a wedge. It commands high prices at auctions and is beloved for its Art Deco curves. But the problem of accessing the engine in these flat-front trucks was a genuine nightmare for mechanics, until our next contender invented a sci-fi solution that changed trucking forever. The White Motor Company strikes again, but this time with something that looked like it drove straight out of a 1950s sci-fi comic. This is the White 3000. At first glance, it looks like a futuristic low-slung pug. The cabin sits incredibly low to the ground, ahead of the front wheels, giving the driver a panoramic view of the road that was unmatched at the time. It was marketed for inner-city deliveries because you could spot pedestrians right in front of the bumper. It usually ran on a Mustang 6-cylinder gas engine, perfect for city hauling. But the real party trick of the White 3000 was the power lift cab. Remember how hard it was to work on the Kenworth bullnose? Well, White solved it. With the turn of a key, an electric actuator would tilt the entire cabin forward, exposing the engine completely. This was revolutionary. Mechanics loved it. No more crawling through grease or taking apart the dashboard. The truck literally bowed down to you. It was the first time this technology was successfully mass-produced, setting the standard for modern cab-over trucks. The White 3000 became a favorite for beer trucks, garbage trucks, and fuel tankers across America. Its futuristic, rounded Art Deco styling makes it one of the most collectible vintage trucks today. It proved that a work truck could be smart, ergonomic, and incredibly cool-looking. From hauling beer and trash in the city, let's move to a truck that hauled something much sweeter and came with a sound every kid in California knew by heart. If you grew up in Southern California between the 1930s and the 1960s, this vehicle brings tears of nostalgia to your eyes. The Helms Bakery truck wasn't just a vehicle, it was a rolling institution. Whether built on a twin coach or the iconic Divco chassis, these trucks were painted in a creamy ivory color and did not sell their goods in stores. They came to you. They were the Uber Eats of the mid-20th century, but with way more class and fresh donuts. The truck was custom designed for one purpose: selling donuts, bread, and cookies door to door. The driver, known as the helmsman, would blow a distinctive whistle, toot toot, that signaled the neighborhood kids to come running. But the engineering quirk here was the storage. The back wasn't just an empty cargo hold. It was lined with beautiful custom wooden drawers filled with fresh pastries. These were stand-drive vans, allowing the driver to easily jump in and out hundreds of times a day while driving at low neighborhood speeds. Mechanically, they were simple, reliable, and not built for speed, rarely exceeding 40 miles per hour. But culturally, they were a heavyweight. They represent a lost era of personalized service where the bakery came to your curb. The smell of fresh bread wafting from these trucks is a core memory for millions of Americans. The Helms truck was all about clever storage, but our next van reinvented the entire architecture of the automobile, predicting the future of the minivan decades early. You might think the minivan was invented in the 1980s by Chrysler, but you'd be wrong. Meet the grandfather of the modern minivan, the DKW Schnellaster, or Rapid Transporter. Post-war Germany needed a utility vehicle, and DKW delivered something radically advanced. While everyone else was using rear-wheel drive with a long drive shaft running under the floor, DKW put the engine and the drive wheels at the very front. This was a front-wheel drive van in 1949, an absolute rarity. Why does that matter? Because it allowed the rear floor to be completely flat and incredibly low, just 16 inches off the ground. You could load cargo almost directly from the curb without lifting it high. It was a packaging miracle. Later versions were powered by a 3-cylinder 2-stroke engine producing around 42 horsepower. It wasn't fast, topping out at roughly 60 miles per hour, but the layout was pure genius. The wheels were pushed to the absolute corners of the vehicle, maximizing interior space. The Schnellaster looked like a loaf of bread on wheels, with a short, stubby hood and a wide stance. It was weird, yes, but it predicted the future of cargo vans. Every modern front-wheel drive delivery van owes a debt to this little German oddball. It showed that moving the mechanical bits out of the way creates more room for business. But if you think metal is the only way to build a car, you're in for a shock with our number 1 pick, which used materials usually reserved for furniture. And finally, at number 1, we have the van that proves size isn't everything. Meet the Lloyd LT600. This van comes from a brand with one of the weirdest nicknames in history, the Leukoplast Bomber or Band-Aid Bomber. Why? Because the earlier cars from Lloyd were literally made of wood frames covered in fabric vinyl due to steel shortages. While this LT600 model eventually upgraded to a steel body, it never lost its toy-like soul and lightweight construction. It is impossibly small. It looks less like a truck and more like a shrunken 1950s wagon. Under the hood, it was powered by a tiny 600cc air-cooled 2-cylinder engine producing a whopping 19 horsepower. Yes, 19 horsepower. It weighed only about 1/400 lbs. It was slow, barely reaching 50 miles per hour downhill, and it had suicide doors that opened backward. Yet, for many small businesses in Europe, this was their workhorse, a step up from a bicycle but cheaper than a real truck. The LT600 is the ultimate example of micro-trucking. It bridged the gap between a motorcycle and a real van. Today, seeing one next to a modern Ford Transit is hilarious. It looks like it could fit inside the cargo hold of a modern truck. It is bizarre, it is rare, and it is undoubtedly the weirdest, bravest little truck on our list. It reminds us that sometimes the strangest solutions are the ones that get the job done when times are tough. From the massive land trains of France to the tiny wooden vans of Germany, we have seen that the history of trucking is anything but boring. These mechanical oddities remind us that innovation often starts with a strange idea. Now, I have a challenge for you. Which of these trucks would you trust to survive a cross-country road trip today? Drop your choice in the comments below. If you enjoyed this ride through automotive history, please smash that like button and subscribe for more deep dives. Thanks for watching, and see you next time. Start your engines, but forget everything you know about standard hauling. Today, we are leaving the boring world of modern logistics behind to witness the absolute maddest creations ever to hit the asphalt. We are entering a timeline where engineers ignored every rule in the book to create hallucinations made of steel. What happens when you put a jet engine in a semi-truck, or design a pickup with absolutely no doors? In this video, we are counting down 10 of the weirdest old-school trucks that actually existed. These aren't just drawings, they are mechanical rebels that defied explanation. Buckle up, hit that subscribe button, and let me know in the comments, which of these monsters would you dare to drive? Let's roll. If you think getting into a truck is as simple as opening a door, the 1967 Dodge Deora is here to prove you wrong. This vehicle is widely considered the world's coolest concept truck, but it has one glaring omission. It has no side doors, none. To enter the driver's seat, you have to perform a gymnastic feat. The entire front windshield is a hatch that swings upward on a pivot. You literally have to climb through the face of the truck, spin around, and drop into the bucket seats. It is an entrance that guarantees all eyes are on you. Underneath this radical chop-top skin lies the chassis of a humble Dodge A100 compact pickup. But the Deora was far from humble. Designed by the legendary Alexander brothers, it moved the trusty slant 6 engine further back into the bed, creating a mid-engine layout. This shift was necessary to accommodate that futuristic cab-forward design. Weighing in at roughly 3,000 pounds, it wasn't built for speed, topping out around typical highway speeds of 70 miles per hour. The steering wheel even had to be a swing-away model just to allow the driver's legs to pass through safely during entry. The Deora looks like it drove straight out of a sci-fi comic book and landed in the 1960s. It wasn't just a show pony, it was a fully functional vehicle that challenged the very definition of a pickup truck. It won the prestigious Riddler Award in 1967, cementing its place in custom car history not as a workhorse but as a piece of rolling art. While it never made it to mass production, likely because climbing through a windshield isn't practical for a delivery driver, it remains an icon. It forces us to ask, why be practical when you can be unforgettable? Travel back to the late 1930s, an era obsessed with the future. This was the age of Art Deco and streamlined moderne, where everything from toasters to trains was designed to look fast. The 1939 Dodge Airflow tanker is the ultimate expression of this philosophy applied to a heavy-duty truck. Commissioned by Texaco, these fuel tankers looked like futuristic locomotives cruising down the highway. The design features a continuous flowing body that seamlessly integrates the cab, the fenders, and the massive 200-gallon fuel tank into one smooth aerodynamic shape that turned heads everywhere it went. Technically, these trucks were marvels of their time. Dodge utilized a bridge truss construction for the tank itself, which acted as a structural component. This allowed for a lower center of gravity and better handling than the boxy, top-heavy tankers of the day. Weighing over 15,000 pounds when fully loaded, it was powered by a robust Dodge inline-6 engine. While it looked fast enough to break records, it was designed for steady cruising at around 45 to 50 miles per hour. The airflow wasn't just about vanity. The streamlining actually improved fuel efficiency, a critical factor for a fleet vehicle. They were painted in Texaco's bright red, becoming moving billboards that promised speed and modernity. However, the onset of World War II and the changing tastes of the 1940s meant the airflow era was short-lived. Most of these beautiful giants were driven into the ground during the war effort and eventually scrapped. Today, seeing a surviving airflow tanker is like spotting a dinosaur, a massive, elegant creature from a time when industrial design prioritized beauty just as much as function. It begs the question, why are modern fuel trucks so boring compared to this masterpiece? Imagine standing next to a semi-truck at a traffic light. You expect the deep, rhythmic chug of a diesel engine. Instead, you hear the high-pitched, piercing whine of a jet plane preparing for takeoff. You aren't hallucinating, you are looking at the Leyland gas turbine truck. In the 1960s and 70s, British manufacturer Leyland believed the future of long-haul trucking wasn't diesel, it was jet propulsion. They built a series of prototypes powered by regenerative gas turbine engines, capable of producing between 350 and 400 horsepower. It was a bold vision of a smoother, quieter trucking future. The engineering behind this was fascinating. The turbine engine had far fewer moving parts than a piston engine, meaning less vibration and a much smoother ride for the driver. Rated for a gross train weight of nearly 40 tons, it could cruise effortlessly at 70 miles per hour. It could run on almost any flammable liquid, diesel, kerosene, or jet fuel. Leyland fitted these engines into their ergomatic cabs, modifying the grille and intake to suck in the massive amounts of air the turbine required. On the highway, they were powerful beasts that signaled the arrival of the space age. So, why don't we drive jet trucks today? The reality was harsh. While the engine was simple, the heat it produced was intense. The exhaust was hot enough to melt the asphalt or singe the car behind it if the driver wasn't careful. Furthermore, fuel economy at idle was terrible. Turbines loved to run at full speed, not sit in traffic. Ultimately, the oil crisis of the 1970s killed the project, leaving the Leyland gas turbine as a fascinating what-if in automotive history. It remains a testament to a time when we tried to make trucks fly, figuratively speaking. If you visited Paris in the 1950s, you might have seen a vehicle that looked like it was designed by aliens for a sightseeing tour. This is the Citroën U55 Cityrama. Built on the sturdy chassis of a Citroën U55 truck, the bodywork was crafted by the coach builder Curus to be the ultimate tour bus. It featured a double-decker design with a futuristic glass-enclosed upper deck and a bizarre jutting shark nose front end. It looked less like a bus and more like a spaceship cruising the boulevards of Paris, capturing the imagination of everyone who saw it. The goal was visibility. The Cityrama was designed to give tourists an unobstructed view of the Eiffel Tower and the Louvre. The amount of glass and steel used in this construction was staggering, pushing the total weight to nearly 10 tons. Mechanically, it relied on the standard Citroën drivetrain, which had to work incredibly hard to push this heavy, unaerodynamic glass brick through the city streets. Speed was not the priority here. It crawled along at leisure speeds, allowing tourists to take photos, although it struggled significantly on any steep incline due to its immense weight. However, the Cityrama had a fatal flaw: the greenhouse effect. With all that glass and no modern air conditioning, the interior would become an oven on sunny days. Tourists would literally bake inside their futuristic viewing capsule while trying to enjoy the architecture. Despite this, the Cityrama remains one of the most visually distinct vehicles ever made. It is a symbol of a time when the experience of the passenger was valued above all practical engineering concerns. It is weird, it is wonderful, and it is uniquely French. In the world of truck design, there is weird, and then there is Luigi Colani weird. The Schnibble Mobile is a prime example of Colani's philosophy of bio-design, the idea that there are no straight lines in nature, so there shouldn't be any in cars either. Built on the chassis of a Mercedes LP608, this vehicle looks like a giant white insect or a melted spacecraft skimming the asphalt. The cabin is a bubble of glass and curves, completely detaching the driver from the traditional boxy truck environment. It stands as a radical departure from everything we know about cargo transport. This wasn't just an art project. It had a specific technical purpose. It was commissioned to test tires for high-speed performance. The bizarre shape was aerodynamically optimized to achieve an extremely low drag coefficient, far superior to any standard truck. This allowed the vehicle to reach higher testing speeds and maintain stability where a brick-shaped truck would fail. While the base Mercedes engine was standard, the aerodynamics allowed it to slice through the air with minimal resistance, proving that efficiency comes from shape, not just horsepower. The driver sat high up in a central cockpit, controlling the vehicle with a view that resembled a fighter jet pilot's perspective more than a trucker's. The Schnibble Mobile challenges our brain because it removes the familiar reference points of a truck. There is no flat grille, no square bumper, no vertical windshield. It is a fluid sculpture powered by a diesel engine. While Colani's designs were often dismissed as too radical for production, they pushed the boundaries of aerodynamics in trucking. But let's be honest, nothing on the road today looks as wild as this. Look at the front of a Tempo Matador and tell me it doesn't look like a sad puppy or a surprised fish. This German utility truck from the late 1940s is instantly recognizable by its face. The headlights are positioned low, giving it a distinct, almost anthropomorphic expression. But the weirdness isn't just skin deep, it's in the engineering layout. The Matador was one of the few front-wheel drive trucks of its time, a feature that gave it a completely flat cargo bed low to the ground. This made loading heavy goods significantly easier than in American trucks. To achieve this, the early Matadors used a 25-horsepower engine sourced from Volkswagen. Yes, just 25 horsepower to haul a payload of over 2,000 pounds. The top speed was barely 45 miles per hour if you were going downhill with a strong wind. But here's the catch. Volkswagen didn't want a competitor using their engines, so Tempo eventually had to switch suppliers to Austin or ILO engines. The engine was tucked right behind the cab, driving the front wheels. This layout was brilliant for space, but meant the poor little engine was constantly overworked. Despite its underpowered nature, the Matador was a hero of post-war reconstruction in Germany. It was simple, versatile, and the low loading height made it a favorite for delivery men and tradespeople. Today, they are incredibly rare and sought after by collectors who love that goofy, lovable face. It stands as a reminder that you don't need massive horsepower or an aggressive design to be a legend. Sometimes you just need a lot of character and a friendly face. In the 1950s, the Fageol twin coach company decided to rethink the delivery van. The result was a vehicle that looks like a giant beetle or a loaf of bread on wheels. The Fageol twin coach delivery is defined by its incredibly round, bulbous shape. Unlike the sharp corners of modern FedEx or UPS trucks, the Fageol had curves everywhere. It was designed with an integral frame construction, meaning the body and chassis were one unit. This monocoque design provided maximum interior space with a relatively short wheelbase, perfect for navigating tight city grids. This design was all about urban efficiency. The round shape wasn't just for style. It allowed the truck to navigate tight city alleyways without snagging its corners on buildings or other cars. Inside, the driver had a commanding view of the road through a split windshield. The engine was typically an International Harvester or similar reliable powertrain, tucked away to maximize cargo floor space. These trucks offered a massive interior volume of over 300 cubic feet, while remaining smaller than many passenger cars of the era. They were the backbone of postal services and bakeries. There is something undeniably cute about the Fageol. It reflects the optimism of 1950s American design, where even a utility vehicle deserved to have style and presence. Seeing one today is a visual shock because we are so used to the utilitarian, boxy designs of modern logistics. The Fageol proves that a delivery truck can have a soul and a silhouette that makes you smile. While most have rust away, the survivors are cherished as reminders of a time when your morning mail arrived in a giant friendly beetle. General Motors took a massive gamble in the 1960s with the Corvair, a car featuring an air-cooled flat-six engine mounted in the rear. They decided to apply this same radical architecture to a pickup truck, creating the Corvair 95 Rampside. Because the engine was in the back under the bed, the rear floor had to be raised. This created a problem for loading cargo. GM's solution: a literal drawbridge on the side of the truck. The Rampside featured a massive door on the passenger side that folded down to create a solid ramp. This innovation allowed you to roll a wheelbarrow, a lawnmower, or heavy equipment straight into the deep well of the truck bed, right in the center of the vehicle. It was a stroke of genius. The truck was rated for a payload of roughly 1,800 pounds, and the forward control design meant the driver sat ahead of the front wheels. The rear engine layout provided excellent traction even when the truck was empty, a common issue for traditional light pickups. With about 80 to 95 horsepower depending on the year, it wasn't a powerhouse, but it was incredibly clever. However, the Rampside was undeniably weird. Driving it felt different. The steering was light, and the weight distribution was unlike anything else on the road. While the ramp was brilliant, the raised rear bed floor limited the space for large, flat loads like plywood sheets. Production ran only from 1961 to 1964, making it a short-lived experiment. It remains a cult classic today, a testament to a time when GM was willing to try completely different engineering concepts to solve everyday problems. Is it a luxury car? Is it a truck? The 1937 Studebaker Coupe Express is the grandfather of the El Camino, but it did it with infinitely more class. In the 1930s, if you bought a truck, you usually got a rough, bare-bones cabin. Studebaker changed that. They took the front end, chassis, and luxurious interior of their Dictator passenger sedan and seamlessly mated it with a steel pickup bed. The result was a vehicle that offered the comfort and style of a gentleman's coupe with the utility of a farm truck. Under the hood lay a smooth L-head inline-six engine producing about 90 horsepower. While that sounds modest today, in 1937 it allowed the Coupe Express to reach speeds of up to 85 miles per hour, significantly faster than the average truck of the day. It weighed roughly 3,300 pounds and featured a double-walled steel bed, proving it wasn't just for show. It was designed for the gentleman farmer or the business owner who wanted to haul goods during the week, but drive to church in style on Sunday without looking like a laborer. The production numbers were incredibly low, making the Coupe Express one of the rarest trucks in existence today. It stands out because it doesn't look like a Frankenstein creation. The lines flow perfectly from the hood to the tailgate. It represents a brief, beautiful moment in history where utility didn't have to mean ugly. It is, quite possibly, the most elegant pickup truck ever built, blurring the lines between work and leisure decades before the modern luxury truck market even existed. We end our list with a truck that might look more familiar but was a revolution in its own right: the DAF 3300 Space Cab. Before this truck arrived in the 1980s, long-haul European truckers lived in cramped, miserable boxes. You couldn't stand up. You could barely move. Dutch manufacturer DAF looked at this and said, "No more." They introduced the concept of the high-roof sleeper, creating a literal apartment on wheels. The Space Cab was weird at the time because of its proportions. It looked like a block of flats moving down the highway. But inside, it was a revelation. For the first time, a driver could stand up fully to put on their trousers. It featured better insulation and a turbocharged, intercooled 11.6-liter diesel engine, producing up to 330 horsepower. This engine was a beast, capable of pulling gross combination weights of 40 tons across continents with ease. The squared-off, boxy design was purely functional, maximizing every inch of volume allowed by European length regulations. It turned the driver's seat from a place of work into a place of living. While it lacks the curves of the Art Deco era or the jet engines of Leyland, the DAF 3300 is on this list because it changed the human experience of trucking. It proved that a truck could be a home. Every massive sleeper cab you see on the American highways today owes a debt of gratitude to this boxy Dutch pioneer that dared to prioritize the driver's comfort above all else. It reminds us that sometimes the weirdest idea is simply treating the operator like a human being. From trucks with no doors to buses made of glass and engines that sound like jet planes, we've seen that the history of trucking is anything but boring. These engineers didn't just build vehicles. They built dreams, experiments, and sometimes beautiful mistakes. If you could park just one of these weird machines in your garage, which one would it be? The futuristic Deora or the elegant Studebaker? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this ride through history, smash that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the world of amazing machines. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next road trip. Forget the boring trucks you see every day. Transport history is hiding the most insane and bizarre mechanical monsters you won't believe actually existed. From massive 8-wheel drive giants with the power to crush any terrain to tiny, freakish machines that defy all laws of physics and logic. This isn't science fiction. These are real flesh and steel machines that once ruled the streets. Today we are unlocking the secret files on the 10 most unique and rare vintage trucks in the world. Brace yourself, buckle up tight, and hit that subscribe button right now because this trip into the past is about to get incredibly bumpy. Let's start with a true heavyweight champion from the United Kingdom, the Scammell Highwayman. If you grew up in Britain between the 1950s and 70s, this wasn't just a truck. It was the undisputed king of the road. Produced by Scammell lorries, the Highwayman was iconic for its distinct, almost aggressive bonneted design that looked like a bulldog ready to bite. While most trucks of the era were transitioning to flat-front cab-over designs to save space, Scammell stuck to their guns with this massive protruding nose. It wasn't built for speed, topping out at around 30 to 40 miles per hour, but it was built to pull absolutely anything. What makes the Highwayman truly unique is its legendary status among fairground showmen. Originally designed for heavy haulage and general transport, this truck found a second life, pulling massive fairground rides and electric generators. Why? Because it was built like a tank with a solid steel chassis. It was often configured as a ballast tractor, a short, heavy truck loaded with concrete weights to generate enough traction to pull incredible loads up to 50 or even 100 tons. The engines, often sourced from Gardner or Leyland, were loud, reliable beasts that could run forever, provided you didn't mind the deafening noise inside the cabin. Visually, it is unmistakable due to the motif on the radiator grille and those singular round headlamps sitting proudly on the fenders. Later models even pioneered the use of glass-reinforced plastic, fiberglass for the bonnet, a revolutionary move in the 1960s that prevented rust and reduced weight. Driving one was a workout. It had no power steering and the heater was practically non-existent. Today, a restored Highwayman is a piece of industrial art. But while the Scammell was busy hauling massive carnival rides across Britain, over in Italy, engineers were building a truck so small you could almost park it in the Scammell's glove box. If the Scammell is a Great Dane, the Piaggio Pentaro is a Chihuahua trying to pull a sled. You have probably heard of the Piaggio Ape, the famous three-wheeled Italian delivery scooter, but the Pentaro is something much weirder. The name comes from the Greek word for five, because this is a five-wheeled tractor-trailer. Yes, Piaggio actually built a miniature semi-truck based on a scooter engine. It was introduced in the early 1960s as a solution for navigating the incredibly narrow, winding streets of ancient Italian cities, where a full-size truck would simply get stuck between buildings. The engineering is hilarious but brilliant. The driver sits on a saddle, steering with motorcycle handlebars, but behind him is a professional fifth-wheel coupling, just like on a giant 18-wheeler. It was powered by a tiny two-stroke engine producing barely enough horsepower to reach 40 miles per hour downhill. Despite its size, it was rated to carry loads of up to 2,500 lbs, 700 kg, making it a serious tool for transporting vegetables, wine, or building materials. Because it was an articulated vehicle, it could turn in extremely tight circles, making it the ultimate urban delivery weapon for tight corners. However, driving the Pentaro was terrifying. The stability was questionable, and with a heavy load, braking required foresight and prayer because the trailer brakes were mechanical. Today, the Pentaro is one of the rarest versions of the Ape family. Collectors go crazy for them because they represent a time when Italy was rebuilding itself, and no idea was too crazy if it helped get the job done. It looks like a toy brought to life, but it worked hard for a living. From the tiny streets of Italy, we now jump to the rugged terrain of Czechoslovakia to meet a truck that laughs in the face of mud, snow, and gravity. When it comes to off-road trucking, there is one name that stands above the rest, Tatra, and the Tatra 138 is the machine that cemented that reputation. Produced in Czechoslovakia from 1959 to 1971, this truck is an engineering marvel that defies convention. Unlike almost every other truck on the planet that uses a ladder frame chassis, the Tatra 138 is built around a unique central backbone tube. Imagine a giant steel pipe running down the center of the truck, protecting all the drive shafts inside. This makes the truck incredibly rigid and virtually twist-proof, allowing it to carry payloads of over 12 tons across broken terrain. But the real magic lies in its swing axles. Each wheel moves independently, allowing the Tatra 138 to crawl over boulders, ditches, and deep mud that would snap a normal truck in half. Powering this beast was the T928 engine, an air-cooled V8 diesel producing around 180 horsepower. Why air-cooled? Because water freezes in the Siberian winter and boils in the desert summer. Air does neither. Tatra engines were designed to work anywhere, from the freezing taiga to the scorching tropics, without a radiator to worry about. Top speed was around 45 mph, but off-road it was unstoppable. The design of the 138 is also beautiful in a functional way. The rounded hood, often called the Tatra smile, wasn't just for style, it provided excellent visibility for the driver and better aerodynamics. These trucks were exported to over 40 countries and became legends in construction and mining. Drivers often claimed that the only thing that could stop a Tatra 138 was running out of fuel. It is a rugged, unstoppable force of nature that proves complex engineering can be incredibly durable. The Tatra 138 was built to conquer continents, but our next vehicle was built for an island nation with very specific rules about size. Welcome to the strange world of Japanese K trucks. In post-war Japan, the government created a tax class for tiny vehicles to get the population mobile. Enter the Aichi machine industry and their masterpiece, the Koni 360 Wide. Don't let the name wide fool you. There is nothing wide about this truck by American standards. It is so narrow that two large adults sitting inside would be practically hugging. Introduced in the 1960s, the Koni 360 Wide is a masterclass in space efficiency, featuring a cab-over design that pushed the wheels to the absolute corners to maximize the cargo bed length. Underneath the seats lies a tiny air-cooled two-cylinder boxer engine displacing just 354 cc that is smaller than most modern motorcycles. It produced roughly 18 horsepower, which was just enough to propel the lightweight truck and a payload of about 770 lbs, 350 kg, to a top speed of maybe 50 mph on a good day. Yet this little workhorse was the backbone of Japanese small businesses. It delivered tofu, rice, and electronics through the bustling streets of Tokyo and Osaka, fitting into alleys that no other vehicle could enter. What makes the Koni stand out today is its rarity and its face. The front fascia has a distinct, almost robotic look with low-mounted headlights and a simple metal grille. Unlike its competitors like the Subaru Sambar, the Koni is largely forgotten, which makes finding one today a huge event for collectors. Driving one is a visceral experience. With zero crumple zones, you are sitting right on top of the front wheels, feeling every bump in the road. It's cute, it's terrifying, and it's deeply charming. The Koni used a tiny air-cooled engine to save space, but our next German contender used air cooling for a completely different reason: reliability. If Germany had Mercedes and America had Ford, Spain had Pegaso, and the Pegaso Comet was the truck that put the entire nation on wheels during the economic boom of the 1960s and 70s. Manufactured by Anasa, this truck bore the famous Flying Horse logo, a symbol of power and speed. The Comet wasn't just a vehicle, it was the pride of the Spanish automotive industry. With its boxy cab-over design and the distinctive cross-shaped grille, it dominated the highways from Madrid to Barcelona, becoming the undisputed king of long-haul transport on the Iberian Peninsula. Beneath the cab lay a 6.5-liter inline-six diesel engine pumping out 125 horsepower. That might sound modest today, but back then it was a powerhouse, allowing the truck to reach a top speed of around 60 mph, 95 km/h, while fully loaded. Pegaso was famous for the distinctive roar of its exhaust and its incredible durability. Drivers often tell stories of loading the truck with over 18,000 lbs, 8 tons of cargo, frequently exceeding legal limits, yet the Comet would still climb the steep mountain passes of the Pyrenees without breaking a sweat. Today, the Pegaso Comet is remembered as the truck that built modern Spain. It hauled bricks to build hotels, oranges for export, and the hopes of a growing economy. Although the Pegaso brand was eventually acquired by Iveso, the legacy of the Flying Horse lives on in the hearts of vintage truck enthusiasts. Seeing a restored Comet rolling down the road is like watching an old gladiator who still has his strength. From the Spanish giant, we return to Italy for another three-wheeled oddity that tried to challenge the dominance of the Piaggio ape. When you think of Italian scooters, you think of two names: Vespa, made by Piaggio, and Lambretta, made by Innocenti. This rivalry didn't stop at scooters, it extended into the world of utility trucks. While Piaggio had the Ape, Innocenti answered with the Lambro series, and the Lambro 550 is arguably the peak of that lineage. Launched in the mid-1960s, this wasn't just a scooter with a box. It was a serious attempt to make a three-wheeled truck that felt like a car, featuring a fully enclosed steel cabin to protect the driver from the elements. However, unlike a car, you still steered it with handlebars. Imagine sitting in a metal box, shifting gears with your hand on the handlebar clutch, and listening to the buzz of a 198cc two-stroke engine right underneath you. It was noisy, it vibrated, and it smelled of oil and gasoline. The 550 in the name referred to its payload capacity class. That's right, this tiny tricycle could carry over 1,200 lobbies, 550 klar of cargo. That is an incredible weight-to-size ratio, essentially allowing it to carry its own weight in bricks or produce. Visually, the Lambro 550 is distinct from the Ape. It has a squarer, more industrial look, often described as utilitarian chic. In Italy, these were the lifeblood of small villages used by bakers, builders, and farmers to navigate tight cobblestone streets. Sadly, when the Innocenti factory closed, the Lambro faded into obscurity faster than the Ape. Finding a working Lambro 550 today is rare. They are mechanical time capsules of an era when Italy was getting back to work, one tiny, smoky load at a time. The Lambro was a lightweight sprinter, but our next truck is a heavyweight marathon runner that carried the economy of the entire Eastern Bloc. If you lived in Eastern Europe during the Cold War, you saw this truck every single day. The Liaz 706 series is not just a vehicle, it is a symbol of socialist transport. While the Model 706 RT was the original legend, the Liaz 706 MT, which stands for Modernized Trambus, took the platform to a new level in the late 1960s. The term Trambus referred to its cab-over-engine design, which gave it a flat face resembling a bus or a tram. It was the direct evolution of the famous Skoda trucks and became the standard heavy truck for everything from garbage collection to international long-haul trucking. The Liaz 706 MT was powered by an improved M634 inline-six diesel engine displacing nearly 12 liters. It wasn't fast, topping out at around 45 to 50 mph, 75 km/h, and it certainly wasn't quiet, but it had torque for days. The payload capacity was significant, often rated for around 9 tons on the truck itself, plus a trailer. The design of the cabin was surprisingly spacious for its time, often featuring a sleeper berth for drivers who spent weeks on the road. The most distinct feature was its large, friendly face with big round headlights and a split windshield. It had a soft, bouncing suspension that made the cabin sway like a boat, a feeling many retired truck drivers remember with a mix of nostalgia and motion sickness. These trucks were exported all over the communist world, from Cuba to Vietnam. They were simple machines that you could fix with a hammer and a wrench. While Western trucks were adding electronics and comforts, the Liaz remained a purely mechanical beast. Today, seeing a Liaz 706 MT on the road is a rare treat, a smoking, rumbling reminder of a fallen empire's industrial might. The Liaz was a conventional four-wheeler, but in Japan, Mazda decided that three wheels were enough, even for a truck the size of a house. When we say three-wheel truck, you think of the tiny Piaggio or Lambretta we just discussed. But Mazda had a different idea. They thought, why don't we make a three-wheeler that is massive? The result was the Mazda T2000, the crowning glory of Japan's obsession with three-wheeled cargo haulers. This is not a K-truck. It is a legitimate heavy-duty vehicle that is over 20 feet, 6 meters long. Produced from 1962 to 1974, the T2000 looks like a spaceship from a 1950s comic book, with a long, narrow hood leading to a single front wheel and a wide two-seat cabin behind it. It was the most powerful in its class, boasting a 2.0-liter, four-cylinder, water-cooled engine putting out about 80 horsepower. This allowed it to carry a payload of 2 tons, which was impressive for a tricycle. It could reach speeds of up to 60 mph, 100 km/h, which must have been a frightening experience. The main advantage of this bizarre layout was a ridiculously tight turning radius. You could drive this 20-foot giant into a narrow timber yard or a crowded construction site, spin it around on a dime thanks to that single front wheel, and drive right out. The T2000 was widely used in construction and logging, earning a reputation for toughness. However, driving it required skill. If you took a corner too fast while empty, the stability was exciting, to say the least. As Japan's highways improved and speeds increased, the unstable three-wheelers fell out of favor and were replaced by conventional trucks. Today, the Mazda T2000 is a highly coveted collector's item. It represents the pinnacle of a unique evolutionary branch of the automotive tree that simply stopped growing. The Mazda T2000 looks like science fiction, but our next truck looks like it drove straight out of a history book from the 1930s. The Praga RN is a time traveler. First introduced in 1933 in Czechoslovakia, this truck was so good, so reliable, and so essential that it remained in production for nearly 20 years, surviving World War II and the communist takeover. The RN stands for Rychly Nákladní, which translates to fast cargo. By modern standards, it wasn't fast, topping out at roughly 50 km/h, 80 km/h, but in the 1930s that was a marvel of performance. The design is pure classic elegance with a long square hood, separate flowing fenders, and large headlamps mounted on a chrome bar. Under the hood lay a 3.5-liter six-cylinder gasoline engine producing about 70 horsepower. It was a thirsty engine, but it was incredibly simple to maintain. During the war, it served as a military transport, an ambulance, and a supply truck. After the war, it rebuilt the country. It was the fire truck that saved villages, the bus that took workers to factories, and the delivery truck that brought food to cities. The payload was rated at around 3 tons, making it a versatile medium-duty truck that could go anywhere. What makes the Praga RN special is its simplicity. It was built before planned obsolescence existed. The parts were heavy, over-engineered, and designed to be repaired indefinitely. Drivers had to double-clutch every gear shift and wrestle the non-assisted steering wheel, but they trusted the Praga with their lives. Seeing one today at a vintage show is like looking at a rolling monument to the resilience of the mid-20th century. The Praga was a Czech legend, but for our final entry, we have to talk about the truck that motorized the entire Soviet Union. We end our list with the most produced truck in the history of the Soviet Union, the Gaz-51. If you look at old footage of Russia, China, or North Korea from the 1950s and 60s, 90% of the trucks you see are Gaz-51s. Over 3.4 million of these units were built. It was the Ford F-150 of the communist world, everywhere, doing everything. The design was heavily influenced by the American Studebaker US-6 truck sent to Russia during World War II, but Soviet engineers adapted it for even harsher conditions and lower quality fuel. It featured a simple 3.5-liter inline-six engine producing 70 horsepower, giving it a modest top speed of around 45 mph, 70 km/h. Early models even had wooden cabins to save steel, though later versions were all metal. With a payload of 2.5 tons, it wasn't a giant, but it was tough. It wasn't comfortable and the suspension was stiff, but it was virtually unstoppable in mud and snow thanks to its high ground clearance and robust drivetrain. It taught millions of people how to drive and how to fix an engine with basic tools. The Gaz-51 is fascinating because it is the ancestor of modern trucking in half the world. It was exported to Poland as the Lublin 51, to North Korea as the Sungri 58, and to China as the Yuejian NJ130. It is a vehicle that lacks the glamour of the Scammell or the quirkiness of the Mazda, but its sheer impact on human history is undeniable. It is the humble hero of the working class that literally built nations. Our journey discovering history's 10 most bizarre and unique vintage trucks ends here. From the unbelievable power of the Tatra to the adorable tininess of the Pentaro, engineers of the past were truly unafraid of the craziest challenges. Which machine impressed you the most? Leave a comment below. If you found this video interesting, don't forget to hit like and subscribe to join us in exploring more mechanical legends. Thank you for riding along and see you in the next video.